Welcome, everybody. We're very excited about sharing the next 20-25 minutes with you about a topic that's very close to all of our hearts. As you just heard, we are all focused on hospitality and tourism and leisure in one or the other way. Me, Benjamin, I'm the founder of Limestone Capital, as well as Ethos Hotels. With Limestone, we have an investment company that invests into this space, both from through real estate as well as through brands, and really backing founders that share our vision for mindful tourism and for mindful travel, and that's really what we want to focus on today. We also, just one word on the magazine that some of you already have in your hands, we also incubate brands like Ethos, which is a conscious hotel brand, really focused on barefoot luxury, and we also want to talk a little bit about that. But really turning to the panelists, as you know, we're extremely excited to be backing you and partnering with you, and I want to talk a little bit about your vision for mindful tourism and for the travel industry as a whole. Maybe starting with you, Sophie. You have a very unique background as a founder. You've done many expeditions. I think you have circled the planet about 7 times. You've seen more ice bears. Actually, let's ask the audience. Who of you guys have seen an ice bear before in real life? So I think 4 or 5 people. You have seen about 550, I think.
Polar bears.
Polar bears, yes.
Iceberg, I think thousands.
Thousands and thousands. And so you are starting one of the first, if not the first, carbon zero cruise company. And you're tackling a very big problem, which is the dirty and wasteful nature of the tourism industry. As many of you know, of course, cruises are an incredibly impactful part of the tourism industry. What is different about Selar, and what drove you to start the company?
So, as you said, the cruise industry is a really big problem today. And our company is building a new kind of cruising. So we have a sustainable model, we create extraordinary experiences, and we have zero-carb ship. So how did we get to change that industry? Well, we took the old existing and dirty model, we took it in our arms, we made a ball, and poof, to the garbage bin. And we had an open field, so we erased everything, and we had to rethink it. And rethink the cruise industry starts with rethinking the tool. Instead of an old pollutant ships, today cruise ships pollute as much as a flight. So we built a human-sized ship that is powered by nature, the wind and the sun, thanks to solar sails. And that is possible because we lower the speed, and the ship is a lightweight ship.
Is it correct that the sails are made out of solar panels?
Exactly. The sails are actually made of aluminiums, and you have 1,000 square meters solar panels on it. And it's enough to supply the needs of our ship, and that's how we get zero-carb cruise. But it's not only about the tool, it's a coherent balance with the model itself. So instead of having, you know, the old way logistic where you have everything scheduled and you're almost rushed to finish your glass of champagne before to go on the dancer show, we have the opposite. We have a blank sheet for every day. Every day is an adventure, and it's built by our experts that knows the field by heart, and they know every detail to create the best surprise and the best emotion on one day. Maybe you're gonna be waken up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch orcas sailing around the ship, and you have to go out with still dressed with your
robe.
How do you say, with your robe on the slippery deck. It's -20. They come close to you because there's no noise, completely silent. You hear the blow, and it's the best day of your life.
That's amazing. That's super cool. And I think this is one of the big trends that we're seeing right now, that all of us are touching on in one or the other way. The consumer mind is really shifting. Yep. Björn, you have started a cabin company called Off-Grid. You're hosting guests in the middle of nature. Can you talk a little about what has changed for the consumer that they're seeking these kind of isolated experiences similar to going on a polar expedition? Now this could be outside of a metropolitan area. What is changing for the consumer, and what has changed for you going from e-commerce into something like tourism?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, meditation, mindfulness is very close to my heart, and it really has changed my life upside down over the last years. And I've realized switching off is the best thing you can do and reconnect with yourself. So I realized we need to find a way how to basically facilitate and allow people without any knowledge of meditation or mindfulness to reconnect with themselves in a beautiful, easy way. So we did that by, and I love nature and outdoors and exploring, so we came up with the idea of designing micro cabins of 20 square meters that are completely energy independent. They filter its own water, clean its own water, fully powered by solar. It's a big challenge, but it works. And we've designed these cabins that we place 1 to 2 hours outside of metropolitan cities, because we've realized people want to get away more often without the hassle of booking a flight, finding a hotel, being surprised by the location. So we want it to be as easy as renting your e-scooter to, okay, let's just get out for 1, 2, 3 days and switch out in nature. And the second thing is what we've realized, and post-pandemic, everybody being used to working remotely, that people don't just want to take a vacation to be completely off, but basically work from nature, watch the cows, the birds, the field. Especially when I've grown up in Berlin, I'm not used to cows around me. So whenever I'm out on the field and have dirt on my hands, I just love basically being out there on the ground and setting up those cabins. Yeah.
If we look at tourism as a whole, right? As we all know, it's a massive industry. I mean, in Europe, it contributes about 5% to overall GDP. It's the largest industry by far. If you take service overall, the labor force makes up about 70% of the total labor force is in service, right? So it's a gigantic industry, and I think that's something that at least drives me as an investor and as a founder. One of the things with, I would say, mass tourism also, though, is there's a lot of different opinions, and I think the next generation with the next generation, tourism has almost the worst reputation. It's almost, let's say, not adequate, not cool anymore to take long-haul flights. And how do you, Maxime, with your company Emerald Stay, where you have luxury chalets, you're one of the fastest growing rental companies in Europe, how do you balance this kind of mind shift towards sustainability with, at the same time, the desire to indulge, to enjoy, right? Go into the hot tub in minus degrees in the mountains. How do you balance these two things?
Look, honestly, it's difficult. I mean, I think it's very easy to bullshit ourselves and to bullshit also you and the audience. At the end of the day, tourism, it's dirty. It's a dirty industry. It's a carbon-emitting industry. It's 10% of world CO2 emissions. And so talking about mindful tourism, yes, it exists, but at the end of the day, you're never going to be inherently net zero. I mean, perhaps you are going to be with your special, in your cabins, but I mean, at the end of the day, traveling in hotels or in private properties or on yachts or whatever, it's not going to be carbon zero inherently. And actually, let's run. I mean, how many of you have taken at least 3 flights over the past year for leisure? So not for business, but at least 3 flights. Raise your hand if you've done so. I'm raising my hand. Okay, so majority, I would say. That's already, so the impact of tourism, so out of the carbon footprint of tourism, 50% of that is transport. It's actually getting to the hotel, getting to the villa, to the chalet, getting, where maybe not you because it's driving by car, but it's, so if you think about just that, what do you do about that? Right. Of course, tourism is going to be carbon emitting. So the questions becomes then, does tourism provide something else as a net, on average, as a net positive to humanity that compensates these weaknesses? So in our case, what we're seeing, and sorry for the long intro to the question, in our case, what we're trying to see is there's value in actually reconnecting with people you love, surrounded by nature, it can be also in cities, but in basically pausing for a while, indulging, and yes, we have hot tubs in our chalets, and if we remove them, people are just going to book the ones for the competitor, you know, and then it's not going to change much.
I want to interject and just talk for a second about the impact that you can have as a company, though, as kind of a trickle-down or trickle-up effect, right? Sure. I mean, we talk about this a lot with the cruise company, but I think you as a B Corp can also say a few words about that. How can you change the big companies, the big polluters, because we can do things as small companies differently than them.
So what we were indeed the first B Corp in our industry in Europe. I don't know how many of you know B Corp, like a certification. Not many actually. Okay, I think it's rising and rising, but it's I think one of the most famous now certification. We chose them because it's not only about climate; it's also about governance, about how you treat your workers, about supply chain, about the suppliers you deal with, the local communities. It's much bigger. In fact, climate is only 25% of their overall assessment. So we chose this certification because in our position, we can't do much about the carbon emissions, but we can do about how we treat employees.
What does it mean to the consumer or to employees? Does it have a big impact?
It has a big impact the biggest impact is on hiring, actually. So all these millennials that I want to have, it's really, when they see B Corp, they're like, okay, here I'm talking to a company, even if they're in tourism and they're carbon emitting, et cetera, they're trying to do better. And I think Patagonia now is the poster child of B Corp. The B Corp scale goes up to 200 points for like the best company. I mean, like, you know, I think Patagonia has about 160. Right. You have to have 80 to qualify, and an average company that takes the test will have about 40 or 50. So it's quite actually difficult, but it means you're also not only about the climate, also about the way you treat employees, the well-being of your guests, of your suppliers, etc. And I think that matters as much, in my opinion, as carbon.
And just to add to that, right, from an investor's perspective, there's a new regulation since January 1st of this year where banks are required to audit funds and investment firms on their sustainability practices in a completely new paradigm. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for us now, we've just crossed about $1 billion AUM. That becomes a huge topic. And so not only do we invest now out of conviction and our values into companies like this, but I think because we have to. And so if we kind of, last question on sustainability, what would you wish that the cruise industry learns from this innovation and this technology that you guys are developing?
I think I wish they've learned to go back to basics, reduce the scale of the ships, and also to give some more purpose than only leisure by having the ships sailing where they are. For example, we develop side projects that are enhancing and empowering the local ecosystem that gives some reason beyond just the leisure experience to be there. And then of course to make some more effort for having less waste, because it's one of the biggest problems.
But it is really going like this, right? I mean, the new kind of, was it Icon of the Seas is the largest cruise ship in the world, and then you going smaller and smaller. I mean, it's the industry is really kind of going in two different directions, right? Yeah,
it has to become more sober in a way, to be to face the climate challenges we have to meet.
I want to do a hard shift. Maybe if you want to.
No, I had a question. I mean, because we have to be mindful. We're like 1%ers, you know, catering in a way in our businesses to like 1% or 0.1%ers. Yeah. What do you answer to people saying, well, okay, you're building this new amazing cruise ship, but it's like a niche catering to a niche. What about? I mean, is to get like masses as well. I mean, because they also have the right to travel on cruises, right? The more average consumers. Will it be possible one day, you think, to replace the entire, in one distant future, you know, the entire cruise ship industry with like ships like yours? Or if you want to go mass tourism, that's the only way to do it, to emit a lot of carbon and to build these like Icon of the Seas? Because I think the masses also have a right, in a way, right?
It's a really interesting question, and it's part of our challenges to make it accessible for the masses. Today, it's not possible, but we strongly believe that we can be the example that will lead then to to lower the price of building such ships, a bit like Tesla
Like
was
Tesla
the
in
proof,
the car industry, okay.
and then to be able to scale it much more. But for the moment, what we are building is also lasting experiences. In the way we talk about it with Björn yesterday, the word last means bring back to your society, and that's the way we also reach out to more than just the people that are on board.
So that's a great segue, because I did want to talk a few minutes about the other part of mindfulness, which is mental health and this desire to disconnect that you kind of all talked about. Can you talk a little bit about, Björn, how, when you mentioned meditation, you mentioned, you're a yogi and you love practicing lots of these things. Can you talk about what role does things like psychedelics, things like alternative practices to kind of calm down your mind, meditation, what are these things, what is the role of those things in modern hospitality?
I guess it's a big and exciting question. First of all, I just had my very first mushroom trip a couple of weeks ago, and it really changed my life. And people say there's a life before and life after, and the connection I've gained with myself is, cannot be described in words, actually. But I think in terms of the experiences we can create, designing a space that allows you to switch off, even though it's just 20 square meters, but it's so transparent, so connecting you with nature. And since, even though we sit in a building here, we all come from nature eventually, and that's why spending time out in the forest, we all feel rejuvenated. And when you think of, I don't want to go too esoteric, but basically aromatherapy is what nature does to us naturally when we go out, hiking in the forest. What you smell, what you feel is what the trees are actually using to communicate with each other, and that's the essence of aromatherapy. So without any knowledge, you're out in the forest, you're actually calming down, you're strengthening your immune system, and even just 2-3 hours does a lot to your body already. And finding this out, and the science behind it was just so fascinating. And so we thought, we need to create a stage, basically, where you don't compromise on your experiences from a modern hotel, and within like 1 or 2 hours from your home, you can actually be in a beautiful environment that allows you to do so without being too spiritual, without being too like, oh, you have to do this and that. And I think just experiencing boredomness and waking up on the field basically already allows you to switch off and disconnect. Yeah.
Do you think, and Maxime or Björn, do you think the pandemic and COVID had an accelerating effect, or what was the effect of COVID on the consumer mindset when it comes to travel, and especially when it comes to mindfulness, mental health, calming down, disconnecting from kind of our stressful everyday lives?
Yeah, I think, being always on, working from home, having our phones, really have to force yourself to be disconnected digitally. And, what we've all, appreciated because we couldn't travel, just going for a walk in the local park, going to the local forests, and just really enjoying, nature and the countryside nearby. And, having grown up in a metropolitan city, it takes me forever to really be in a space like this. This is maybe 40 minutes from Berlin. And for us, it's super easy to get there, but just the sheer beauty of a simple, harvesting field is just tremendous and amazing to experience, especially at night, the silence.
How do you, Maxime, because one of the things that I'm really excited about Emerald is your ability to scale the company now, right? We've been on this for 5+ years, and you've kind of figured out the formula now to bring the experience to more and more people. And I think, given the size of the industry and the amount of people that want to experience, chalets, villas, rental homes, apartments, can you talk a little bit about the scaling in our industry? Because it is an inherently hard industry to scale. It's very capital intense. That would be great if you give us some insights.
There are many ways to scale. The way we scale is by not only signing new properties organically, but by also acquiring existing rental managers that have already an existing portfolio in destinations. I think the most challenging when you scale is to maintain a cohesive culture. And I think going back to what I was saying before about B Corp, about not only about climate, it's also about the way you treat your workers, about the way you treat local communities. This is all a result of how strong your culture is. And as you scale, the most difficult, as those of you know who've scaled companies, is to maintain a strong culture. So now we're actually doubling down on making sure that this cultural net that we've built stays cohesive across our sailing journey. And it requires sometimes hard choices where you have to let go of people who are performers in terms of the raw business sense, the raw business data, but actually don't fit the culture and would be damaging. So it is really, really, I think, as a consumer, you don't see this. But if as a consumer, the money you pay goes back to an ecosystem that's basically very mindful about the impact we have on others and on the entire ecosystem, then it's a win for me. And then sustainable tourism actually does exist.
The last topic I just want to touch on, because it's so important, I think, to Ethos, the brand that we incubated from the beginning, was the connection to the local community and the authenticity of the experience that we can provide. And so, I mean, as you've seen a few of our hotels, we have now 5 hotels operational. We're rolling out another 6, 7 hotels in the next few years. We've just raised, the last couple of months, we've raised over 100 million for new properties and kind of rolling out our brand. But at the same time, we always have to come back to this authentic connection to the places that we enter, right? Because you oftentimes, especially on polar expedition, you're the outsider, right? You're coming in and you don't want to leave a trace. You want to be a good neighbor. Can you maybe, as a final remark, talk about how are you a good neighbor? How are you mindful about the environment that you enter? And how can you make sure that you leave a positive and lasting impact for the community communities that we partner with?
Sure.
Maybe I can start.
Take it,
yeah. So for us, the ground base is to be carbon neutral with our activities and with the tool, as I said. And then we go beyond. We want to have a positive impact to where we go. So we have some side actions linked to our cruise. We do plastic removals. We integrate locals as guides because it's their home, so they are the best to know wherever to go and to talk about how they their vision about tourism there and share emotions. And we also have some science that is done because the ship is a material that sails in the water, and you can put a lot of sensors and have some use in having something in the water there. So we try to optimize the fact of being there, and of course then we are also committed with B Corp, and we do a lot of partnerships with the local suppliers and the local ecosystem.
Maxime?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to what you do at Ethos. At the end of the day, it's how can the local communities benefit from us entering this market? And to be very frank, I mean, do we do things drastically different than other operators of chalets and villas? I mean, I'm modest enough, I think, I hope to not think so, but just promoting the local products. Working whenever you have, I don't know, maintenance issues, you work with the local workforce. You promote the local beekeeper, honey, etc. At some point, we wanted to standardize, because coming from bigger corporations, at some point we were like, hey, do we standardize all our stuff? Like you go in a Hilton or a Marriott, or have all the soaps everywhere the same. We actually took the opposite route. We're like, no, we're going to actually localize the stuff.
Right.
We're gonna localize, because at the end of the day, who cares about having the same soap, whether you go to, in Chamonix or in Mallorca, or in your case in Portugal, or like, no one cares. You just want soap. So you might as well make the soap be a local product. And
so local products,
that's
partnering with local entrepreneurs.
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Björn, and maybe you can talk a bit about the farmers that you partner with on all these fields that you're rolling your like, how are you partnering with them, and how do you leave a positive impact on your partners there?
Yeah, I think since the product that we've designed is completely, literally off the grid, we collect our water, we refilter our water, and you can take a shower for an hour, and we still just use 20 liters of water, since it goes back into the loop and gets filtered and cleaned, and we're using the grey water to flush the toilets, and everything is solar paneled. And it was quite fascinating to be able to actually do that once it actually worked, and feeling the theory in reality. And this really allows us to have no impact on the farmer's land that we are basically placing the cabins on. They're prefabricated, made of natural materials, and we can place them there. It takes us a day to set them up, technically, and we have a revenue share with them, and basically allow
So it's a new income stream for them.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's awesome.
And for the local communities, and I was quite fascinated.
By the way, today, as you saw, it's a great opportunity for you to meet a lot of Munich farmers because they're driving around the city in protest. So maybe
some extra revenue.
With that, I know we're already run over time. I invite, obviously, all of you to check out the different companies. Selar is still in stealth mode. We're not promoting it yet. But I think through your partners, you've already pre-sold, was it 2 years of cruises, which is super impressive. But go on the websites, check it out. I think we placed some magazines and cards around for a special DLD rate and discounts. So you can all check out the hotels and the villas and, of course, the cabins. And disconnect from maybe after this busy conference. So with that, thank you so much. And appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.